The airport was packed with travelers, families dragging heavy suitcases, exhausted parents chasing after energetic children, and government employees glued to their phones. It was the usual scene of chaos. Colonel Musk Carey stepped inside, his polished leather shoes clicking against the tiled floor. He had been through this routine countless times, moving across the country on military assignments, but this time was different. On his shoulders were not just the weight of medals, but the responsibility of escorting a fallen comrade home. Nearby, in the cargo hold of a waiting aircraft, lay a flag-draped casket. Private First Class Adam Carter, just 21 years old, a young soldier taken far too soon. Musk Carey took a deep breath, straightened his cap, and stepped toward the check-in counter. He placed his military documents and escort orders on the desk, his gaze steady as he met the eyes of the airline employee processing his information. She glanced at his papers, typed something into the system, and then hesitated. 1 second, then 2, then longer than necessary. She turned to her colleague, exchanging a silent but telling look. Something was wrong. Musk had seen this before, too many times. He knew when the atmosphere shifted. When she turned back to him, her forced smile did nothing to conceal her hesitation. "Sir, there seems to be an issue with your ticket. We're unable to clear you for boarding at this time." Musk exhaled slowly. He had handled tougher situations, battlefields, diplomatic meetings, classified operations, but this was different. "I am escorting the remains of a fallen soldier," he said, tapping his paperwork gently on the counter. His voice was calm but unwavering. "I understand, sir," she replied, though it was clear she didn't fully grasp the significance. "But there is a special security protocol in place for situations like this. We cannot override it." "Security protocol?" Musk didn't budge. "What policy?" No clear answer. A supervisor was called. A man in his 50s with the tired expression of someone accustomed to denying requests without explanation. He repeated the same lines about policy and procedure, yet neither he nor his staff could specify what, exactly, was wrong with Musk's ticket. The line behind him had started to take notice. A murmur spread through the crowd. A uniformed soldier being denied boarding? A middle-aged woman folded her arms, watching the scene unfold with a frown. A young man took out his phone and started recording. Then a voice rose from further back in the line. "Excuse me, but is there an issue with his military clearance?" Musk turned. It was an older man wearing a Marine Corps veteran cap, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had served. The airline supervisor looked uncomfortable. "No, sir, this isn't a clearance issue. It's just that we must adhere to the correct procedures." "What procedures?" the veteran interrupted. "I've flown with the military for decades, and I have never heard of a policy barring a soldier from escorting a fallen comrade home." Tension thickened. The bystanders were no longer just passive observers. They were witnesses, and some of them were recording. A young woman in the crowd glanced at her phone and whispered to someone next to her, "It's live streaming." Moments later, an airline representative returned, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him stood a man in a black suit, someone with real authority. "Colonel Carey," the man addressed him with a measured tone, "we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. There appears to have been a misunderstanding, and we are working to resolve it immediately. We will arrange for you to fly first class right away." Musk stared at him. "I don't need first class. I don't need special treatment. I just need respect, and so does the soldier I am escorting." No one had a response to that. The weight of his words settled over them like a cold truth. Within minutes, the situation escalated. Veterans organizations intervened. The media caught wind of the story, and the airline lost control of the narrative. A hashtag calling for a boycott started trending, spreading like wildfire. And just when Musk thought the ordeal was over, another figure arrived, a senior officer from the Pentagon. "We received reports about this situation, Colonel," the officer said. "You and Private Carter will not be flying commercial. We have arranged for a military transport to take you home." Once again, the room fell silent. Musk glanced around and saw the faces of those who had spoken up, those who had refused to let injustice be swept aside. He adjusted his uniform, straightened his shoulders, and walked forward. Because this mission had never been about him, it was about the respect that every fallen soldier deserved. Atlanta International Airport was a bustling hub, with thousands of people passing through each day, travelers dragging suitcases, children dashing ahead of exhausted parents, announcements echoing across the vast terminal. In the midst of the crowd, Colonel Musk Carey strode in, his crisp military uniform pressed to perfection, polished leather shoes clicking against the glossy tiled floor. He had taken countless official trips before, but this time was different. On his shoulders was not just the duty of an officer, but the solemn responsibility of escorting Private First Class Adam Carter home. He approached the check-in counter, placing his military documents and escort orders on the desk. The airline employee glanced at him, typing quickly into the system, then suddenly paused. A long silence followed. She looked up at him, hesitated, then exchanged a glance with her colleague. A silent conversation passed between them, and Musk immediately knew something was wrong. He had been in enough situations like this to recognize the shift. "Sir, it seems there is an issue with your ticket. We're unable to allow you to board at this time." Musk tightened his grip on his cap, keeping his composure. "I'm escorting a fallen soldier home," he stated, emphasizing every word. "My documents are in order. I've done this before, and I've never encountered a problem." "I understand, sir," she replied, though it was clear she didn't. "But there's a special security protocol in effect, and we're unable to override it." An excuse, a vague refusal. Behind Musk, the line of passengers waiting for check-in had started to notice. A middle-aged woman leaned toward her husband, whispering. A young man pulled out his phone and started recording. A voice called out from behind, "Excuse me, but is there an issue with his military clearance?" Musk turned. An older man wearing a Marine Corps veteran cap stood with arms crossed, his gaze sharp. The airline supervisor stepped forward, a middle-aged man with the demeanor of someone accustomed to denying requests without explanation. "No, sir, this is not a clearance issue. It's simply a security protocol that we must follow." The veteran smirked. "I've flown military transport for decades, and I've never heard of a policy that prevents an officer from escorting a fallen soldier home." Tension thickened. The air felt heavy. Phones were now held up, recording. This wasn't just about Musk Carey anymore. It was becoming a public spectacle. The airline employee shifted nervously. The supervisor sighed, rubbing his forehead, then said, "I'll check the system again." He hurried into an office behind the counter. But the situation wasn't over yet. A young woman, no older than 25, stepped forward, phone in hand. "I don't mean to intrude," she said, her voice hesitant yet firm, "but are they really not letting you board?" Musk exhaled slowly, his eyes still fixed on the check-in desk. "That's correct." She blinked as if expecting a different answer. Then she turned her screen toward the crowd. "I'm live streaming this," she said. "People need to see this." Instantly, murmurs grew into waves of discontent. A young man in a hoodie glanced up from his phone and murmured, "It's trending on Twitter." A tweet flashed across his screen. They just denied boarding to a U.S. Army colonel escorting a fallen soldier home. Is this how we treat those who serve? Below, the number of shares was skyrocketing. All eyes turned back to the airline staff. The supervisor returned, looking pale. He forced a stiff smile. "Colonel Carey, it appears there was a system error," he said. "We're working quickly to correct it. We'll upgrade you to first class immediately." Musk tightened his grip on his cap. "I don't need first class," he said, his voice slow and deliberate. "I just need respect, and so does the soldier I'm escorting." No one had a response to that. The silence stretched. Then another voice rang out from the terminal entrance. "Colonel Carey!" A man entered the scene, walking with authority. Major Thomas Beckett, a representative from the Department of Defense, approached, his gaze scanning the situation. "We received reports about this incident," he stated. "You and Private Carter will not be flying commercial. We have arranged a military transport to take you home." Once again, the room fell silent. Musk looked around, seeing the faces of those who had spoken up, those who refused to let this injustice go unnoticed. He straightened his uniform, squared his shoulders, and walked forward. Because this mission was never about him. It was about ensuring that every fallen soldier received the respect they deserved. Atlanta International Airport was as bustling as ever. Passengers dragging their suitcases, business travelers glued to their phones, children darting around exhausted parents. Announcements echoed through the massive terminal, blending into the chaotic hum of the crowd. In the middle of it all, Colonel Musk Carey stepped inside, carrying a responsibility heavier than any civilian around him could imagine. Escorting the remains of a fallen soldier, Private First Class Adam Carter, back home. His polished leather shoes tapped against the gleaming tile floor, steady and resolute. He had carried out many difficult missions, but this one was different. This was not a military operation, not a high-level strategy meeting. This was a duty to a fallen soldier, to his grieving family, and to the honor of the military itself. Musk approached the check-in counter, placing his military documents and escort orders on the desk. The airline employee, a woman in her early 30s, glanced at him through the thin layer of glass before typing a few commands into her system. A slight frown creased her forehead, and when she looked back up, her expression had changed. "Sir, there seems to be an issue with your ticket. We can't allow you to board at this time." Musk narrowed his eyes. He had heard these words before, in different circumstances, but never in a moment like this. "I am escorting the remains of a fallen soldier," he said slowly, emphasizing each word. "My paperwork is in perfect order. I've gone through this process before, and there has never been a problem." She swallowed, her eyes flicking toward a coworker at the adjacent counter. A silent exchange passed between them before she turned back with a strained smile. "I understand, sir," she said, her voice carrying a forced politeness. "But at the moment, there is a special security protocol in place. We are unable to override it." An excuse. Behind Musk, passengers waiting in line had begun to take notice. Some raised their eyebrows. Others murmured to each other. A middle-aged man with graying hair discreetly pulled out his phone and started recording. "I need to understand exactly what the problem is." Musk kept his tone calm but firm. "This is not a personal trip. This is a military duty." A tense silence stretched between them. Then a voice rang out from behind him, deep, steady, and unwavering. "Excuse me, but is there a problem with his military clearance?" Musk turned. An older man, perhaps in his 60s, stood there wearing a Marine Corps veteran cap, arms crossed, eyes sharp. The airline supervisor approached, his gait heavy with the weariness of someone who had handled too many complaints. "No, sir," he answered, trying to sound professional. "This is simply a standard security protocol." "Oh, really?" The veteran smirked. "I've flown hundreds of times with the military, and I've never seen a standard protocol like this." The atmosphere in the terminal shifted instantly. The passengers in line stopped what they were doing, tuning into the unfolding situation. A young woman with a phone in her hand stepped forward. "I'm live streaming this," she announced, her voice steady with determination. "People need to see this." More heads turned. A young man in a hoodie checked his phone and muttered, "It's trending on Twitter." Within minutes, a tweet appeared. "A U.S. Army colonel escorting a fallen soldier has been denied boarding. Is this how we treat those who serve?" The murmurs escalated. The airline employee cast a nervous glance at the supervisor. He took a deep breath before speaking. "Colonel Carey, it appears there was a system error. We're correcting it now, and we'll upgrade you to first class." Musk Carey didn't move. "I don't need first class," he said, his voice slow, deliberate. "I need respect, and so does Private Carter." The entire terminal fell silent. Then, from near the terminal entrance, another voice called out, "Colonel Carey." A man entered, walking with authority. Major Thomas Beckett, a representative from the Department of Defense, strode forward. "We received reports about this incident," Beckett stated. "You and Private Carter will not be flying commercial. A military transport has been arranged." The airline supervisor's face turned pale. This was no longer in the airline's control. Musk Carey turned, taking in the faces of those who had spoken up, those who had refused to let this injustice be ignored. Adjusting his uniform, he squared his shoulders and walked forward. Because this mission was not just about bringing a soldier home, it was about ensuring that every fallen hero received the honor they deserved. The airport buzzed with the familiar sounds of chatter, echoing announcements, and the rhythmic clatter of suitcase wheels rolling across tiled floors. Colonel Musk Carey stepped inside, his crisp military uniform immaculate, polished black leather shoes striking the ground with unwavering precision. But today was not just another flight. He wasn't traveling for duty or returning home from an assignment. He was escorting the remains of Private First Class Adam Carter, a fallen soldier, back to his hometown. At the check-in counter, Musk placed his military documents down. The airline employee, a young woman, skimmed through them quickly, her fingers tapping across the keyboard. Then she frowned. A brief glance exchanged with a colleague. A barely perceptible hesitation. "Sir, there seems to be an issue with your ticket. We cannot allow you to board at this time." Musk's brows knitted slightly. This wasn't the first time he had flown on military escort duty. "What's the reason?" His voice remained calm but firm. "There are certain security protocols in place, sir." "What protocols?" She hesitated. The atmosphere around them grew heavier. Nearby passengers started to take notice. A middle-aged man frowned, pulling out his phone to start recording. Then another voice spoke up behind Musk. "Excuse me, is there a problem here?" Musk turned. A Vietnam War veteran, likely in his 60s, stood with his arms crossed. His cap bore the embroidered words, "Vietnam Veteran." The airline supervisor approached, exhaling in that polished, professional way that signaled he was about to deliver an excuse. "We apologize, but we cannot bypass standard security procedures." "Standard?" The veteran raised an eyebrow. "I've flown hundreds of times and never seen a standard like this." The entire check-in area seemed to pause. A ripple of murmurs spread. Several passengers raised their phones, quietly recording. Musk Carey's voice remained steady. "I am escorting the remains of a fallen American soldier. I need a direct answer." The check-in agent glanced at her superior, then back at her screen. There was nothing wrong with Musk's credentials, but now they had been caught. Then, from the queue, a young woman's voice cut through the tension. "I'm live streaming this. People need to see what's happening." Musk didn't move. He didn't need to raise his voice. The public would speak for him. The supervisor, clearly unsettled, stepped back, muttering something into his radio. A minute later, he returned, his face pale. "Sir, we sincerely apologize for the inconvenience. We are arranging a first-class seat for you." Musk's gaze was unwavering. "I don't need first class. I need respect. And so does Private Carter." The airport fell silent. The people had heard, and this story would not be forgotten. The airport remained bustling with hurried travelers, but at the check-in counter, time seemed to stand still. Colonel Musk Carey stood firm, his uniform a silent declaration of duty and honor. Across from him, the airline supervisor looked increasingly nervous, sneaking glances at his phone, knowing that the situation had spiraled beyond his control. All around, people had their phones out, recording everything. On their screens, posts were already going viral. A U.S. Army colonel denied boarding while escorting the remains of a fallen soldier. Outrage spread faster than any flight. A man in an airport security uniform approached, whispering into the supervisor's ear. His face turned pale instantly. "We have a problem." His voice wavered. Musk didn't need to ask. He already knew. This incident had reached higher authorities. The supervisor cleared his throat, attempting to regain composure. "Colonel Carey, it appears there has been an unfortunate misunderstanding. We are arranging for you to be placed on the next available flight." A heavy silence hung in the air. Then a voice from the crowd broke through. "Oh, now you can?" It was the Marine veteran who had spoken earlier. He stepped forward, his piercing gaze locked onto the supervisor. "They only fix their mistakes when they get caught. If no one had recorded this, would Colonel Carey have been allowed to board?" The entire terminal held its breath. The question was impossible to ignore. The supervisor froze, unable to answer. He knew that any response could be used against the airline. Musk Carey remained silent, observing. Finally, he gave a slight nod. "I don't need an apology. I need respect." The supervisor lowered his head. "We understand." But they didn't truly understand. Not yet. Then the airport's public announcement system crackled to life. Airline XYZ is conducting an internal investigation regarding today's incident. The terminal erupted with murmurs. They all knew this wouldn't end with a quiet apology. As Musk Carey stepped away from the counter, the Marine veteran stood tall and saluted him. "They'll remember this, and we'll make sure they don't forget." Musk adjusted his hat and returned the salute with the respect it deserved. He wasn't seeking victory. He was just here to complete his mission, to bring Private First Class Adam Carter home. The crowd at the airport had yet to disperse, and cameras were still recording every moment. Standing firm at the check-in counter, Colonel Musk Carey remained unwavering, his eyes steady. Around him, the atmosphere had shifted. The airline supervisor discreetly checked his phone, his expression tightening as he read the headline spreading at lightning speed. U.S. Army Colonel denied boarding while escorting the remains of Private First Class Adam Carter. This was no longer just an internal issue. It had become a public outrage. An airport security officer approached, lowering his voice as he spoke to the supervisor. The supervisor took a deep breath, visibly struggling to maintain composure. "Colonel Carey, it appears there has been a serious misunderstanding. We sincerely apologize and will arrange for your immediate boarding." Musk didn't move. He had heard too many apologies like this before. From behind him, the Marine veteran stepped forward, arms crossed, his gaze sharp. "Apologizing only because you got caught?" he asked, his voice slow but heavy with meaning. A few passengers nodded. A woman nearby whispered to her husband, "If no one had recorded this, would they have apologized at all?" The silence stretched on. The supervisor swallowed hard, then said, "We've arranged for you to be seated in first class." Musk Carey let out a quiet chuckle, but it wasn't one of satisfaction. "I don't need first class. I need respect." The entire terminal seemed to hold its breath. A woman in a denim jacket murmured, "He's right." The supervisor hesitated, unsure of how to respond. He knew this situation wouldn't simply go away. Then, as the final blow, the airport's loudspeaker crackled to life. "The incident at the check-in counter has been reported. We are conducting an internal investigation." The frustration in the crowd surged even higher. Musk Carey turned to the Marine veteran and gave him a respectful nod. "Thank you for speaking up." The old man simply smiled. "We never stay silent when a soldier is treated this way." Musk took a deep breath, adjusting his hat. He had fulfilled his duty, bringing Private First Class Adam Carter home. But the consequences of today would echo far beyond this terminal. Colonel Musk Carey stood motionless in the bustling airport, his gaze locked onto the airline supervisor. Beside him, the Marine veteran stood with arms crossed, silently observing the airline staff, who now found themselves caught in the storm of public outrage. The passengers surrounding them were no longer passive spectators. They were filming, whispering among themselves, waiting to see if justice would be served. The supervisor swallowed hard, realizing there was no way to prolong this any further. Bowing his head slightly, he said, "Colonel Carey, we sincerely apologize for this misunderstanding. You are free to board the plane now." Musk Carey remained still, his voice calm, yet weighted like stone. "This isn't about my ticket. It's not about whether I get on this plane or not. The real issue is how you chose to treat a fallen soldier on his journey home." A woman in the crowd spoke up. "That's right. If no one had said anything, this would have been swept under the rug like it never happened." A few scattered claps broke the silence. An elderly man nodded. "He's right. We need accountability, not just last-minute apologies." The airline supervisor pursed his lips, visibly uneasy. Musk Carey stepped forward, his piercing gaze fixed on the airline representative. "Private First Class Adam Carter gave his life for this country. The only thing I asked for was for him to be brought home with dignity, not out of pity, not as an afterthought when you got caught, but with the gratitude of a nation." Silence. Then the entire airport erupted into applause. The passengers who had been recording now lowered their phones. They stood straighter, nodding in respect toward Musk Carey. Beside him, the Marine veteran placed his hand over his heart, a silent salute to a fallen brother. The airline supervisor knew he had lost. He lowered his head, no longer able to offer any justification. Musk Carey said nothing more. He adjusted his uniform and took a deep breath. His mission was complete. He was bringing Adam Carter home. But today, he had done something more. He had awakened a nation. The story of Colonel Musk Carey. The incident at the airport was more than just a procedural mishap. It was a powerful reminder of respect and responsibility. When a soldier gives their life for their country, they deserve to return home with the utmost honor, free from bureaucratic obstacles or silent discrimination. But more importantly, it was about how society responds to injustice. If no one had spoken up, if the passengers had remained silent, if the truth had not been recorded, this moment could have faded away like so many others. Change only happens when people are willing to confront it, when they demand what is right. Courage isn't just found on the battlefield. It exists in everyday moments when someone chooses to stand up, not for themselves, but for the honor of another. Thank you for watching. If you found this video interesting or enjoyable, please show your support by giving it a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow and reach more amazing viewers like you. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss out on our future uploads. Your support means the world to us and keeps us motivated to create even better content for you.